Hello, everybody. We are live and Pardes live. I'm trying something new here. I am not only recording on Periscope and YouTube. Hello, Soul. I'm also recording on an app called Anchor. Anchor is an app on your phone that allows you to stream to, it's like basically a podcasting app, and it sends your podcast to a bunch of different places like SoundCloud and I think it was like iTunes and what other places? Google Play. I don't know all of them, but so here we are. Got this little microphone, and I'm going to use it in order to record. So, happy Friday. And so I'm excited about this. Hopefully, because I know that a lot of you are watching this, while you're doing other things. Like, if you're driving or running or, I don't know what else you do. Sleeping. Someone said falling asleep. So I just thought it would be cool if you had it in a podcast, like an audio format, that you can just take it with you in your phone or whatever. And once I get that up, I'll post the links in my description on my YouTube videos, so you'll have it. So how's everybody doing on a Friday night? We have a lot to talk about, but it is not going to be politics. I'm going to try and stay very far away from that. I know the potential for war with Iran is, people are talking about that a lot, and it's on everybody's mind. A lot of tensions and a lot of people are just fighting over it. So I don't want to be part of that. Hello, Hamid. Wow, it is late in Stockholm. I should do these earlier. And I actually told you that I was going to remind you. Sorry, I totally forgot. So I should try and do these a little bit earlier. But yes, divorce rate is at a 40-year low unless you're 55 or older. So unless you are a boomer, essentially, and older, you are less likely to get a divorce. And as the generations get younger, the divorce rate is going lower. And we have reached, the lowest divorce rate ever. So, let's see. This is a Wall Street Journal article that I just saw. And let's see. In 2017, around 1 million couples decided to get a divorce. So it sounds like a lot, but it's very low when you compare the rates of divorce. So you compare the amounts of marriage and divorce rates to what it was in previous generations. So it's data from the NCHS, the National Center for Health Statistics, and the American Community Survey data. It shows divorces hit a historical high point in 1979, when 22.6 marriages out of every 1,000 broke up, according to researchers at the National Center for Family and Marriage Research at Bowling Green University. By 2017, the rate had dropped to 16.1 divorces for every 1,000 marriages. That's a decrease of 29% from the high point, and the lowest the divorce rate has been in 40 years. Wow. One cause researchers believe is that people are delaying marriage. And I could totally see that happening. People take a very long time. The younger the generation is, the longer people people take in order to get to decide that they're gonna get married, and this is often. I'm gonna put this microphone over here so my podcast can hear it better. But this is often shit. Okay. This is often like something that the older generations like to criticize people on. Like, you're never gonna get married. Why are you taking so long? You're just gonna end up alone, dying alone. Why are you so picky? Why do you have to wait until you're 100 years old to get married? Why don't you just get married now? Just do it. And the thing is that, like, sure, people are taking a very long time now to get married. They want to have their careers first. They want to find themselves. When I say they, I mean we, millennials and younger generations, and even Gen Yers, right? We want to take long to get married. I know that I'm like that. I don't want to take long to get married. I just want to, like, be very calculated and know that it's the right person and the right time, and, like, everything is, and not just jump into something just for the sake of getting married. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, older generations, and the funny thing is, like, so the divorce rate is at a 40-year low, right? So 40 years ago, it means they also had low divorce rates. But the difference between 40 years ago and now is that 40 years ago, people couldn't get a divorce. Like, now you could get a divorce and people are still having lower divorce rates. But 40 years ago, it was really hard to get a divorce. People were very dependent on each other. Marriages were kind of like a necessity, and more than they are now. So even in those cases, even with the ability to get a divorce, it's much easier now to get a divorce. Everyone is so much more independent than we used to be, and people are still not getting a divorce. So that's really good. It means that people are putting a lot of effort into choosing the right person instead of just anybody, and under any circumstances. Let's see. Roland DMX. Someone saying, why not just make things work? Yeah, you could make things work. Hamid is making fun of this commenter from last night. So Felix is right. Divorce lawyers are going to be very upset about this. So why not just make things work is what someone asked. I could tell you a lot of reasons why you shouldn't just make things work. First of all, you shouldn't be getting into a marriage for the sake of getting married. I was just reading a quote from Omar Khayyam today. He's like an old Persian poet, and I shared one of his quotes on Twitter earlier. He said, "It's better to starve than to just eat anything. It's better to be alone than to just be with anybody." So the idea is that you don't want to be with something when it's something good, when it's something that nourishes you. You don't want to have it you don't want to choose it just out of necessity. You don't want to get, and this applies to everything. You don't want to get into a job just based out of necessity because you're desperate for any job. Like, you might do that just for now, but that job isn't going to work out for you in the long term, because when you go into a job, just for the sake of a job, you're not paying attention to it. You're not paying attention to, first of all, whether you will enjoy it, whether it's something that you want to do. You are not asking for the most, you're not asking for the best work situation. You're not like asking for a great pay. You're not asking for the things that you would ideally want from a job, because you're so desperate. So you're just going to take anything. And once all this necessity goes away, like once you're not desperate anymore, then you're just like, well, I don't need this anymore. Like, I used to be desperate, now I'm not. What am I still doing this job? It's like that with friendships. If a friendship is just based out of necessity, you just really, really, really needed someone in the moment, and you were just feeling alone, and like you had to. And then what happens when you don't feel like that anymore? Then you just, goodbye. You don't need that friend. And then they just become like a burden to you. Alex Farah says, I'm in that position now at my job. I totally feel you. For me, I feel like it took me a while to get to this point where I'm just like, you know what? I don't need a job. That is, like, I can freelance. I don't need, like, to be dependent on a job. On, like, you know what I mean? So, like, if someone really needs it, so it's kind of like you get the most ideal situation out of that, because also when an employer sees that you don't need, when an employer sees that you're okay working for yourself, but then like the reason that you want to work for them is because you choose to, not because you're desperate for a job, then they want to do more for you too. So like it's like a win-win, so you just get even more. And it's like that with marriages. You don't want to get married out of necessity, just because you needed money. Like if you're a girl, I see this so often. Like girls will get married just because they need money, or like they don't, they can't support themselves, and they just want to have a family, and or they feel like it's getting late, my biological clock is ticking, I need to get married so I can have babies now, and I don't want to wait, I can't, whatever. And it's like, so people getting married out of necessity, guys will be desperate for marriage. I can't wait any longer. Any woman, whatever. And so like, then when that need goes away and you're like, you've calmed down a little bit, first of all, you start to resent each other, because you start to resent the person that you are dependent on, because they can, you're basically like, you're like in a cage. You're like locked to them. You're attached to them. So you start to resent the other person, and then when the need goes away, you're suddenly free, and you're so happy to be not dependent on that person anymore. And you can just do whatever you want, and it doesn't matter because you don't depend on that person. So then you just, in many cases, the marriage or relationship will deteriorate, and in some cases it won't, but it's usually not a good thing. Usually it isn't. Felix says, I don't know if I want to waste time working, studying, instead of just finding the woman I want to marry. That's true. Like, I actually feel that way too. Like, why can't you like enjoy life and fall in love and work and all that at the same time? Like, why do you have to waste your life? Like, there has to be a way to have it all. Like, why would you throw away like happiness and falling in love and having kids and all that stuff just for the sake of your career? So there has to be like a balance. And I was actually in the car one time, like an Uber car, with this guy who was like an Afghani guy. So I was talking to him, and like he was talking in Dari and I was talking in Farsi, but like we understood each other perfectly. And because it's basically it's like the same language, just different dialect. But he was telling me about how he was arranged with his wife back in Afghanistan with his ex-wife. And they were married, and it was like, you know, they had kids together and everything. And then they moved to the United States, and once they moved here, it was like they didn't need to be married anymore because, like, their lives changed. They weren't living in that Afghani culture where, like, you can't get a divorce. You know, his wife had rights now. He had, you know, independence. And so they didn't need each other anymore, and they hated each other. So, I mean, there wasn't a connection at all. They literally were just arranged. So they just got a divorce. And then he said, like, and then he went back to Afghanistan to find a wife. And he found a wife that he really liked, and, you know, he didn't need to get married. He wasn't desperate. He already had his kids. He already had his family life. He would, you know, he had his kids were always with him. And he just let himself go back. He didn't force himself, but he allowed himself to fall in love. And he found a woman that he fell in love with. He came back to the United States with her, and he said he's never been happier. He's been with her for, like, I think it was like a really long time. I don't remember how many years it was, but he's been with her for a while, and he loves her very much. And the one thing he told me was, whatever you do, don't marry somebody that you're not in love with. Don't commit to somebody that you're not in love with, because it's not hard to fall in love when the circumstances are right. And you don't want, and like the wise people say, being in a marriage with the wrong person, or in general just being with the wrong person, is worse than being alone. Because when you're alone, you're at least left with your own thoughts and feelings. You can at least be a friend to yourself. When you're with the wrong person, not only do you have to deal with the voices inside your head, you also have to deal with another toxic person that's bringing you down and just bringing your confidence lower, making you more upset. And, like, you know, when someone is not the right person, when you're around people who are not the right people, you're gonna feel more lonely than if you were just by yourself hanging out. And that's what, like, anyone can tell you that. Jesus says, not just love, the secret is having a shared dream. Yeah, like shared, someone said, oh, Tom says, it's Afghan, not Afghani. That's, in Farsi, we say that. So, yeah, like shared values, shared dreams. I feel like those kind of things also come into, like, making you fall in love with someone. People are always like, well, you don't know, you never fell in love. It just seems like common sense. And actually, what is love? I mean, I've definitely almost gotten married to someone at some point in my life when I was 20. 20 used to be in, like, the 80s or earlier than that. Let's see, when was this? Okay, in 1963, the average woman married at around age 20, according to Tara R. Jordan, an associate professor of human development and family studies in Iowa State University. So by 1963, the average marriage rate for women was age 20, marriage age. By 2017, the median age at marriage was 27 for women and 29 for men. So not only are women getting married older, but men are getting married to women who are closer in age to them because of, like, the same idea. It used to be that, like, women had to get married because, you know, they needed someone to support them. They needed, you know, their biological clock was ticking and all that stuff. And, like, you know, men needed someone who was younger because for the same reason. They needed, you know, they wanted to have kids or whatever, so they needed, you know, like, they needed to compromise, like, a shared stage in life. They needed to compromise the ability to, like, connect with someone around their own age in order to have like a younger woman who can bear children, and not that that's, I mean, not that that's wrong, but now there isn't that necessity. So you can, if you wanted to, you can get married to somebody with like a large age gap, but you don't have to. And you can get married to someone who's your age, and you can freeze your eggs. There's a lot more technology that allows us to be more flexible with careers and the different things that we want from our marriages. So I find that really interesting, and I think it's just going to get more and more from here. I'm definitely going to get a moderator for some of these comments because some of them are very distracting. Okay. So, someone's saying closer in age is better. Yeah, honestly, like, from what I've seen, the people who are closer in age, in a lot of cases, tends to be easier, but I don't know. Don't quote me on it, but it really seems like easier. Kind of people who are closer in age tend to like relate to each other a lot. For me, definitely, I know that the person that I almost like, you know, got married to was very close in age to me. We were like almost the same. We were like basically the same age, and that was very different from dating someone who was a lot older, because we were like friends basically, and it was like being in love with your friend, like a best friend, and it was really like we were very much very connected. And so it's very different with an older guy. With an older guy, it's like you have, it's like you have, in some cases you feel like the same age, and it doesn't matter. Like in some cases, like some guys are very immature, so you just feel like you're the same age and you don't even realize it. But in a lot of cases, when the guy is older or when the girl is older, I see this like women too who are like with guys who are a lot younger, it's hard to like respect the person who's younger than you, because you've had so much more experience. You're probably better off in your career. You're like, and like this younger person is just like, hey, what's up? And it's, and then there's not like a mutual respect, and so that causes problems. And then from the perspective of the younger person, you're boring because you don't want to go out every night and go crazy, and they want to. And so there's that side. So at the end of the day, I also do agree that smaller age gaps contribute to in a lot of easier things. It makes a lot of things easier. Someone is saying, well, I'm from Generation Z, so millennial women would be my older dating. Steven says, did y'all see Bill Maher on Stern talking about being single? I actually didn't see it. I've seen older couples who like just got married just because, and they're doing really well. But in those cases, I feel like the reason that they got married just because wasn't from pressure, wasn't like, oh, I have to get married, I need to find anyone. I think it was literally just like, oh, well, I found someone I like, and they found someone like me, and, we don't have anything else to do, let's just get married. And so, like, those marriages tended to work out really well, and that's because they didn't come out of pressure. So at the end of the day, don't get married out of pressure. For any reason. Don't get married because you feel like you have to get married, or because someone told you to get married, or because you feel like if you get married to this person, they're gonna you're a kid and they're gonna help you get out of where you are, or get married because you're foreign and you want to get a visa to live in the United States. Like, Felix says, what's your opinion of finding a partner online or, like, for example, Tinder? I've met a lot of my friends online. In fact, most of the friends that actually, no, I can't say most. But a lot of my friends I've met online, and I think that it's good. People are still weird about it because they're like, oh, this isn't a real interaction. Make real connections. But honestly, like, online relationships tend to be really good, and in many cases easier, because when you're online, yes, I met Tom Sauer online too, as he's saying in the comments. They tend to be easier because, like, once you connect online, you're not connecting based off of, like, other factors that are irrelevant. You're connecting from, like, real things, like your minds are connecting. And so you're basically connecting to the right people when you're online, because you're seeing people's thoughts and you're connecting to them instead of just, like, seeing them out and being like, oh, hey, that's a cute guy, that's a cute girl. Yeah, I like their style. And so when you make that connection online, and it's not affected by all these dumb, superficial external factors, you're already being attracted to the right people. So I think it's great, to be honest. I've seen people who got married or engaged to their Hinge dates. I don't know about Tinder, because I feel like Tinder, like, some people work out on Tinder, but I feel like Tinder, like, you can literally have nothing in your profile other than some, like, sexy photo, and people just judge based off of that. Unless you actually have, like, a real deep, meaningful conversation on Tinder, I don't know. If you do have a deep, meaningful conversation on Tinder, then great. Like, that could work out. You could end up getting married to your Tinder date. You Call That Tweet says, I heard that Tinder doesn't let you narrow the search before the swipe decision, but I'm not really looking right now. Ha ha, I bet you are. Steven says, Pardes, why are women immediately attracted to tall men? I feel like it's like the same reason. It's like appearances. Like, you're attracted to someone's appearance because that's all you have to judge based off of. But if you get to know each other better, you start to become attracted to different qualities. Tom Sauer says, you can find out you're compatible with someone before becoming friends in real life. I agree. Like, meeting people in person, I feel like I've had, you have to, like, really get to know them and see if you trust them and they vibe with you and stuff like that. Meeting people online, like, I already know who they, like, how they think and how they talk, kind of, like, from being online. And when I meet them in person, it's just so natural. Like, I already have something to talk about when I meet them in person. You don't necessarily already have something to talk about when you have to, like, people tend to be more guarded when they're in person, and you have to, like, get through the small talk. Felix says, so they can have light bulbs changed. Yeah, the only reason I need to get married is so that I can have someone kill bugs for me, because like, I'm terrified of bugs, and I have mosquito bites everywhere. I have, like, all over, like, I have on my chin. It's really, really awful, and, like, all over my arms and legs. It's just, I can't stand it. And I definitely need someone who's gonna kill, and there's cockroaches outside. I definitely need someone who's gonna kill the cockroaches. So, I am not a giant as people think. I'm not a giant tall. I'm, like, between 5'7" and 5'8", so I'm, like, a good height for women, but I'm not, like, whoa, like, tall. I actually was really, really, like, in love with a guy who was shorter than me, and I feel like it's, like, for someone who was saying, like, why are women always attracted to tall men? I feel like men don't realize how much weight women put on. Okay, men don't realize how much power they have with using their skills, their courting skills. Men think that just the same way that women can get them easily with their looks, so men think that that's how they can get women too. And the same thing with women. Women think that, like, the same way that a guy can get them easily by, being affectionate and, like, courting them the right way. Women think that if they're also very affectionate and have the right personality, that guys are gonna be like, flock their way, and it's not. I feel like there's a huge disconnect, and people just never address it because they don't want to be like, gender. People don't want to be like sexist or whatever, but there's a huge difference. The same way that a girl can get a guy just by some, winks and, look good initially. Guys have a lot of power and they don't realize it. They're just like, oh, well, I'm not tall enough. I got a bald spot here. I got, I don't like the way I look in this way. So guys assume that that's going to be the thing that's going to make women go away. And the real thing, and women will say that initially, they'll be like, yeah, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really easy to get a woman. Confidence, that guy I was telling you about, the one who was shorter than me, he was very confident. Confidence, affection, showing affection, being, just being whatever it is that your woman needs. Being a rock, being confident, being the kind of person that someone can lean on. There's and being aggressive, in my opinion, and I think that this is looked down on so much in our culture. And like, oh no, aggression means you're just being a creep and being in someone's face. The word creep is so relative, and people who use it a lot are dumb. And I've used it too, but it's generally a dumb word because it's so relative, and at the end of the day, the people who get the girl are the people who tried. And those are the people, and that's attractive. Every girl wants to be pursued like crazy. Like, every girl wants to be pursued aggressively, and when I say aggressively, it doesn't mean non-consensual, don't want to be raped, don't want someone touching me without my consent or whatever, but, being respectful, but also aggressive in the sense that you are, you're not afraid to approach a woman, talk to her, and say that you're interested or whatever, and not be afraid of rejection. So those are qualities that will get women. I don't think, I've so many times, I'd be at a party and I would find myself talking to the shortest guy in the room, and there would be these tall guys, really good looking also, they'd be really good looking tall guys who if you look at them, you're just oh, he's cute, I want to talk to him, but that's only if you're thinking about it, but because objectively that guy looks cuter. But when you're in a party, you're not really thinking, you're not analyzing, you're not thinking about it, you're just going with the flow. And it turns out those guys in the corner, like the really tall, good-looking guys, like no one was talking to them because they were so, like, not confident. They were so, like, they weren't talking to girls. They were expecting girls to come and talk to them. The shorter guys were more like assertive, as someone say it. Hamid is saying assertive. That's another thing about shorter men. Shorter men tend to be, they tend to, like, you know, they try to, like, overcompensate, right? So they'll tend to be more assertive, aggressive. Like, they'll go and talk to women. They'll try harder. They'll go and talk to, like, every single woman in the room and, like, you know, yeah, what are you, what's going on? How, what's your name? What do you know, where have you been? What are you doing? Like, I don't know. They're more like in your face. And the tall guys expect that every girl's gonna flock to them because in their mind, they think that girls are all about attraction because they think girls are like them. But girls are not like them because girls are attracted based on emotions. And, like, people don't like to say it. They're like, oh, well, not all girls are emotional, whatever. Like, science backs me up on this. Women, they did a study, and I've definitely mentioned this before. They did a study where they had, like, men and women in, like, separate rooms, and they had they basically showed the men images of, like, you know, sexy women and, like, porn, basically, and they showed for women, they showed, like, sexy looking men, and these are all straight men and straight women. And so anyway, like, they're basically showing them these images, and both sets of, like, men and women, they had people who were getting aroused, right? And they had, like, a test, like a brain test, to see, like, what was happening in their brains when they would get aroused. So what they found was that they were both getting, like, aroused, but it was, like, for totally different reasons. Like, and they weren't all getting aroused, like, for everything. It was, like, the men were getting aroused literally just by looking at the picture, like, just, like, the image of, like a sexy woman in, like, a bikini or something. The men would, like, just immediately get, like, oh, wow, and they would get, like, a response as, like, a visual, like, it would, like, go through their eyes and, like, immediately, like, go to wherever their brain is that makes them, like, turned on. But for women, it was different. For women, like, they would see the image, and it would go through, like, a different loop. It would go through their emotional receptors, and then it would go to the place where they get turned on. And so, like, the whole idea of the study, like, of the results of the study, was that women, even if there is an attractive man and they are attracted to the man for just him being attractive looking, it's not the attractiveness that's getting them. And there's a way to get to that, though there's a way to get to that part of the woman's brain without using the visual stuff. Just by going through the emotional receptors, because that's how women operate. Women get turned on from feelings. Adam Tran says, I'd be afraid to do this because everyone would call me a woman. Wait, to do what? Yeah, people are getting upset at me for saying women operate based on emotions. Like, I'm not saying women don't operate based on logic, and I'm not saying that getting turned on from a porno thing is logic. It's not logic. It's just when it comes to being turned on, men and women are turned on through different parts of their brain. And there's a way to get to that part of the brain of a woman that doesn't involve, like, that doesn't involve, like, objectively how you look. You can really get to that part of a woman just with the right kind of courtship. And a woman can be totally turned on by you and still say, like, and still not think that you're the most attractive in the world, but still be very attracted to you, if that makes sense. And I feel like for men, I don't see that as often. Like, I've seen guys with, like, really unattractive women, but they still see their woman as attractive because, like, I guess that's their style, or that's whatever turns them on visually. And maybe it was because of other things. Maybe it was because of emotional things, but for women, it's a lot more visual. Steven says, for the first 2 years of college, I was a total loser and reject. Junior year, lead singer in a band. Same girls who rejected me threw themselves at me. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, on behalf of women. You could be, like, a total blob. And then if you have, like, whatever it is that women want, like, whether it's, like, status, or, like, money, or whatever it is that women want in that time and place, you're suddenly, like, whoa! You're suddenly, like, the hot guy in the room. Adam says, traditional attractiveness is the opposite of unique, and common is a turnoff. I agree. Normal is boring. Nobody wants to be with a normal person. And so abnormal is good. Do you ever notice, by the way, that the people who are constantly calling everybody crazy, like, tend to be the most, like, insufferable people? Like, the people who are like, yeah, this person, I can't talk to this person has this disorder and that disorder, this crazy, that crazy. But there are a lot of people who, like, don't call themselves crazy, who are really crazy, but they just don't say it because they just don't, in their mind, like, that's a sign of being crazy. If you think everybody else is crazy and you're not, then that's a sign that you're crazy. Sorry to say it. I don't know why I got to this topic. I feel like a little bit I feel like it's kind of, guys, I have I'm recording this on, it's called Anchor. It's an app called Anchor. And it basically allows me to, like, upload this as a podcast to, like, a bunch of audio websites, audio apps. And it's so weird. It's so weird to have this recorded on this, even though, like, I'm doing this every single night, but it's weird to have this, like, extra mic. I will diagnose you. If you want to know whether you're crazy, I will tell you. I'll tell you whether you're crazy. Basically, the rule is if you think you're crazy, then you might be crazy. But if you don't think you're crazy, then you also might be crazy. So you're probably crazy. I read this in an article where, like, it was like I don't know why I was reading this, but it was like red flags in women, like 20 top red flags in a woman. And two of them was, like, if she tells you she's crazy, then she's probably crazy. If she tells you that she's not crazy, then she's also probably crazy. So that's like basically the rule of thumb. But anyway, going back to the marriage topic, and people will say things like, wow, in India or in, like, the Hasidic community or in, like, these different communities where divorce isn't allowed. Wow, it's so good. They have such low divorce rates. And it's like, why would you want to be in a culture where the divorce rate is low because literally you can't get a divorce? Why would you want to be in that kind of marriage where you can't get a divorce because where you're not getting a divorce because you can't. Adam says, just don't date bartenders. Ha! I totally agree with you. I've made that mistake. But anyways, just because the divorce rate is low, there are things to check. If the divorce rate is low because people can't get a divorce, then it's probably not the greatest thing. If the divorce rate is low because people can get a divorce and they're not, then that's a good sign. And so that's why I think that we're in a good place now, and it's just getting better. People are not, there are a lot of people who just don't plan on ever getting married, ever. And, I mean, you know, each to their own. I want to get married and have a million children or whatever, but I don't want to be forced to do it, and I don't want to be pressured to do it at a certain time. And, like, you know, there's a lot of there are a lot of things that you have to conform to reality, but in general, the less pressure, the better, and the more successful marriages tend to be. And it doesn't mean that there's going to be less commitment. When you are in control of yourself and your emotions and your life, you are less likely to, you know, cheat or be uncommitted or anything like that. Anyway, Steven says, I do feel there's something for outside pressure somehow. Somehow I respect my Catholic friends and even my parents for sharing your wisdom. Catholic, even my parents' generation, there was such a stigma to being divorced. It may force them to try and make it work. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's good to make it work. Okay, so this is like another thing that Steven brought up that I think is really important. I guess, like, once you're married, it's really important to try and make it work, because you already married that person and you have to really put your all into it. And if you're not going to put your all into that one, you're not going to put your all into the next one, and you're just going to be in a cycle of, like, never working out. But something that my dad used to tell me when I would go, when I was still in the frum community, in the ultra-Orthodox community, and I was, like, dating through a matchmaker, my dad used to tell me, before marriage, you have to be selfish, and after marriage, you have to be selfless. So, after you're married, like, it's not just about finding the right person anymore. You're already there, and you've got to make it work with what you have. Before marriage is a time to be, like, very, very nitpicky and very critical, and just make sure that you're with the right person. And people say picky, but you don't have to be very picky, but just don't do what doesn't make you feel good, what doesn't feel right, 100% right. So be very, very careful about who you marry, but once you're married, you got to make it work. You got to try to make it work. And if in the beginning of your marriage, if you didn't choose the person for the right reason, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be able to make it work. So maybe that just means that you realized too late that what you did was dumb, and you should get married to the right person for the right reasons. So if you married someone for the wrong reasons, then no matter how much you try, you can't make it work. Felix says another interesting thing is millennials aren't into diamonds as much as older generations are. Yeah, millennials are into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like, you know, hey girl, I have like so much in Bitcoin. I have so much of that fake cash. It exists. You just don't know it exists. But it exists virtually. Adam says that is incredibly wise on your dad's part. Thank you. Iris says, how do I turn off women more? I can't get them to the hall. I can't get them. I can't get the hell away from me. Sorry. How do I turn off women more? I can't get them the hell away from me. Everywhere I go, they're smiling at me and trying to get me to take my clothes off. It's becoming a real problem, Pardes. Well, I can tell you many things that you could do to turn women off, but you probably can just say that, just go around saying that, like, oh, I can't help it, all these women are throwing themselves at me, and then they'll be like, and that goes the same for girls, by the way, like, girls will do this thing a lot, and it's like, it's so funny to watch it, because, like, when you watch it happen with a girl, and then, you already know what's going to happen, and then it happens, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like clockwork. Girls who are like, girls who call, like, every single guy who, like, comes and approaches them is a creep. When a girl does that, it makes you very not approachable, and it just makes you, guys feel it, and they just avoid those kind of girls. And, guys feel when a woman is more approachable or not. So if you're a guy or a girl, and you're just like, I can't believe I'm giving dating advice. I'm like the wrong person, by the way, to give dating advice. But I do feel like there's certain things that makes people more attractive. What makes you really attractive is if you're approachable and humble, and you're not like, I don't want to have anything to do with that person. That person's a creep. I don't want them to come near me. And it's like, sure, maybe the creep won't come near you, but then also means, like, everyone else is not going to come near you. Because everyone generally thinks of themselves on some level as a creep, like, on some level. So I feel like if when you say stuff like, I don't want the creeps to come near me, I don't want to whatever, when you say something like that, you're basically deterring every single person who thinks of themselves as a creep in some way. And it might even be worse, because, like, those people will stay away, like the normal people who think on some level that they might be creepy a little bit. But the only people who stay are the people who, like, in no way consider themselves a creep. And that's even worse, because you're basically surrounded by creeps who aren't self-aware. Adam says, I tell you, the biggest turnoff with women is agreeing with everything is never subversive. Is that with men? Is that if men agree with everything? Yeah, men who are like, oh, all these women are throwing themselves at me. I've got all the girls in the world, and, like, women are just like, okay, and they just go off to the next person. Okay. Let me just... Hamid says, is having a fetish considered creepy? Yeah, no, it's not. I've met guys with fetishes, and I think it's pretty good, actually, because if you have, like, certain things that you like special things that you like, it makes it very easy for your partner, because they can, it just means that they know what can turn you on, and they'll have an easier time, instead of just, like, having to, like, analyze and discover everything and just keep doing things that, and just be nervous, like, not feeling like they can please you. So fetishes are actually, like, a great thing. It's like a specified, interest in something. Paul Nye says, Jesus, she does. My daughter stays with me every other weekend, so I can't complain too much. And something that Adam brought up that makes a lot of sense is that women don't like men who agree with everything. And in general, I think men and women in general don't like people who agree with everything. And probably just because if you agree with everything, it's a sign that you are not being yourself. You're trying to be a version of yourself that works with that person. And people don't want to be, because that just feels fake. People don't want to be with someone who's like, you know, just being a different version of themselves just to be with. So, and I think it's like that with everybody, not just with women. They say like nobody wants a yes man. I think it's like that with everybody. Both men and women want to be with people who are confident and are really themselves, because basically when someone is confident in themselves, it means that they're it's like a sign of stability. It means so many things. It means that they're going to be more honest, because they're going to be more just okay with who they are and what they believe. Ever realize that confident people tend to be very honest in a lot of ways? Like the real confident people, they tend to be more loyal. They tend to be more successful in life, happier, you know, with a lot of things. So there's like so many things that confidence brings. It's very attractive to people, and it's good that it's an attractive thing, because that's basically what's going to get you far in life, is your confidence and your you know, don't try to be a different person. Don't try to be who you're not just for the other person. You could totally be yourself, and at the same you could be perfectly the version of yourself that you want to be, even if it clashes completely with that person, as long as you show interest and you're like, you know, pursuing them, and that's fine. Adam says, I want someone who challenges me but doesn't take shit too seriously. Basically a shit poster in real life. So you basically have to turn some of the Twitter shit posters into real life people. There should be like a thing, by the way, like I feel like there should be and people do it, but they're not doing it as much, because like the internet makes you lazy, and it makes you like just stay on the internet and not leave. Jesus says, don't delete this stream, please, it's great. Why would you think that I'm going to delete this stream? How did you know? What was going on in my mind? Okay. I actually was thinking about it, but now that you mention it, I won't. Okay. But there should be some kind of like, I don't know, people should do more like meetups, especially since Twitter is like banning everybody, and YouTube and all this stuff, and like everyone is just disappearing. It's kind of like a purge, right? So I think it'd be great if people met in real life more, and had like more events. Okay, I won't delete. I feel like it would be really cool if people had like more meetups that were like underground sort of meetups. I could see that happening more often, because everyone's just getting banned from social media. So we have to do a party. Ever since I moved, so here's another thing, and it's kind of random, but like I used to live alone, and now I live with, you know, other people. Kind of like I have my privacy, but I'm also with other people. So basically I always have a fear of like being lonely, like being alone, and I feel like a lot of people are like this. They're just like really afraid to be alone, and if you're like, you know, one day of just being by yourself the whole day can make you depressed, because you're like, oh, I didn't see anybody, I'm all alone, I'm probably gonna die alone too, and it's like this vicious cycle, because then you're just like then you become depressed, and then you alienate yourself even more, and you're just like alone the whole time. But so I tried to get, like, basically what I told myself is like, okay, like I have to get used to being alone in order to like conquer my fear. But then the thing is, like, ever since I moved to a place with other people, I feel like my life changed in such a good way. And you know what? Like, it's not necessary to be alone. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to, like, force yourself to be alone in order to, like, if you're the kind of person who likes to be around other people, that's not a weakness. And you don't have to fight that. And that's what I realized myself, is, like, I kept fighting that. But I don't need to do that. I could just be, I don't have to be alone. So ever since I moved to this new place, it's been so great, because like, you know, I get to be alone when I feel like it, and I don't have to be alone if I don't feel like it. And but there's always gonna be someone there, and that's a really nice thing to have, especially now, because we've got, like, you know, everyone's kind of more isolated. We don't live in, like, these villages and stuff. Diacritical 1 says, I'm cool being alone, just took an 18-day vacation cruise alone, still better being with a friend. Adam says, meeting more people always makes you better. I have taken, like, solo trips that I loved, that I really, really enjoyed, but the only reason that I really enjoyed those trips, I mean, not the only reason, but, like, the main reason why I really enjoyed these solo trips was because I took them at a time when I was feeling stressed out from the other people in my life. And as we mentioned earlier, being with people who are toxic is more lonely than just being by yourself. So it's like, and Tom says this too, meeting with good people makes you better. Being in the company of toxic people, it's definitely worse than being by yourself. So yeah, you don't have to be alone, and try and, you know, if you don't like being alone, if you like to be around other people, pursue being with other people, but you shouldn't also be with other people out of desperation. So I was pretty lucky. That I ended up, you know, with people that I really, really love from the bottom of my heart. And most people don't have that luxury, so that's pretty cool. Solo trip, if you feel like taking a solo trip, definitely go to Iceland. Iceland is, I took a solo trip there, and it was, like, the best thing ever. It does feel very solo, so really, really do it, like, when you feel like you're ready for, like, a very solo trip to, like, almost the North Pole. Don't Call Me Shirley says, Andrew, I know that's Andrew, how do you know when someone is toxic? For me, the way that I know someone is toxic is literally just how they make me feel, because I'm very, like, emotional, and I'm very, like, kind of, like, in tune with my emotions most of the time. And so I'm actually really not a good judge of character. For me, it's really just emotional. So the way that you know someone is toxic, so some people, immediately when they meet someone, they're just like, okay, like, that person isn't good, I don't like that person's not good. For me, I trust, like, everybody immediately when I meet them, and so I have a problem with, like, being able to decipher, whether people are toxic or not. I have a problem with that. So for me, it's really just, I have to, like, the way that I figure out someone's toxic is I literally just experience them. And then if they're toxic, then I'll distance myself. But I personally don't have the gift of being able to, like, see the person straight away and be like, yeah, that person is toxic. Yeah, I basically let everybody in, and then I realize if they're toxic, and then I just bye. And for me, it's just like, if they're toxic, then I'm gonna feel it right away. So it's not that risky, because you feel it right away, and I'm very sensitive and very emotional, so right away, if someone is toxic, like, I'm not going to see it from, like, a logical standpoint. I'm not going to look at them and be like, yeah, that person is not good. But I will spend time with them, talk to them, and experience them on a personal level. And then based off of my feelings, I will know the person is not good, whether they're, like, a liar or they're just bad energy, and they cause me to feel it. Jesus says you can never work as a CIA agent, though. Then I would make a very bad CIA agent. I would make a great, like, honeypot. I feel like I feel like that's a real thing. Like a honeypot, you, like, talk to someone and get them to tell you all your secrets. Like, I would be great at that. And there are so many cases where, like, I've gotten people to open up, but it was a bad thing, because, like, I'm just naturally inclined to, like, get people to open up, just because that's how it goes. But some people are very uncomfortable with that, so, like, it's too late when they realize that they just shared their whole life story with me and they didn't actually want to, and then that leads to problems, because whether it's in journalism, like, you know, or in relationships, like, people will just freak out and they won't, like, talk to you ever again because you, like, got them to share, like, something. You got them to share something that they didn't feel comfortable with. But anyways, so that's my problem, but it's also a good thing. Like, if I were to honeypot someone, I don't know if it's honeypot. It's just, like, you know, getting secrets out of someone. That's a good thing. But everyone else I'd be really bad at. Steven says, why are men in general cut off from their heart? I've only ever cried when I'm alone, except when my dad died, which was so painful, but ironically, I felt when I felt most alive. I don't know, crying is so therapeutic. I cry a lot, like, a lot. There are some times when I cry for no reason, just because, like, I heard a nice song and I felt like crying because it made me feel good. And it's pretty, I feel like it's good for people. Like, most people could definitely benefit from crying, and especially men. Like, for me, it's really hard to connect with a lot of men because they tend to be so logical and, like, afraid of their emotions that they can't. It's like, you want to be able to communicate with people on an emotional level, because you're just gonna die otherwise. Just gonna become depressed. I think men are probably, they're probably less emotional, but also at the same time, like, men are also trained to not cry and not have emotions. Like, if you cry, you're not a man, you're probably gay, you're not, this isn't a real. And all guys, like Alex says, all guys are like that. I never cry, and it's, like, supposed to be seen as, like, a great thing that you never cry, because men are not supposed to have emotions. You have to be a man. And it's like, being with someone who never cries, never allows themselves to feel anything, can be very difficult. It can be very difficult to be with somebody that you can't connect to emotionally. And, like, is that being a man? I don't know. When you can connect to your own emotions, when you find a way to, like, handle and communicate with yourself, you can do that for other people too. You can help someone when they're being emotional and help them through their feelings or whatever it is. And in fact, allowing yourself to cry more and be more emotional, it helps you to be more in control of your emotions. Like, allowing yourself to let go and let loose and not be in control of your emotions sometimes, it makes it so that you're basically trained, you're training yourself to be more in touch with your emotions. You're training yourself to be more used to having them there, and the more that happens, the more you become in control of your emotions. And it's a real thing. It means that when it comes down to it, when you need to control your emotions, when you need to be strong, you need to be a man for somebody, you can do it better. So in fact, crying and being emotional is going to help you in the long run if you want, if you know, you're worried about being masculine. Alex says if we show weakness and vulnerability, the enemy will take advantage of that knowledge. But is everybody an enemy? And what if you showed weakness and vulnerability to yourself? And also, is that a weakness? Really, is that a weakness? I mean, just because you're crying about something, does that mean that you're weak? Does that mean that you're vulnerable? Can someone use that against you? If they do try to, then you know that they have a weakness too. They're also like emotionally incapable. So definitely, if you want to be in control of your emotions, it's also like it's kind of like a similar idea. When I was in the ultra-Orthodox community, it was all about, you know, not having sex outside of marriage, but even in marriage, the sex was very much regulated. It's very much regulated. And people see that as a sign of like, you know, the sex is very regulated, so there's probably, you know, sex is not emphasized. It's such a good lifestyle because you're not focusing on sex. You're focusing on the things that matter, and there won't be infidelity, and there won't be you know, people won't be like so obsessed with sex and everything. And the truth is, and there will be more self-control. The thing is though, like when I left that community and I became part of like the more secular world, I realized that people are not being infidel. People are not being unfaithful necessarily. And as much as I thought that the secular community would be like this, maybe I'm around just good people, it really seems that a lot of these people do have a lot of self-control and in fact don't place that much weight on sex. They have other things that they will place weight on. They can be in a room with a very attractive woman and still not be overtaken by that because they're so like comfortable with their sexuality and it's so available to them. Sex is so available to them. So they're not like refraining from having sex because it's like a rule, but they're just so used to sex being available to them. So for them, they will focus on the things that matter. It's not going to be a distraction to them. They have more control, like self-control over themselves. Sex should not be the central thing. And so, anyway, so just connecting it to the other thing, just connecting it to emotions, it's kind of like the same thing. When you put so many restrictions, it's not necessarily going to make you have more self-control. In fact, it might be more difficult to, when you're in that situation without the boundaries, to have self-control. Someone's asking, serious question, if I left the clothes I just washed in the wash machine for 2 hours, can I just launch those in the dryer or rinse them? It's funny. I don't know. Don't ask me about laundry. Richie says, something repressed comes back with a vengeance. Oh, I love that line. That's so true. That's like really, you repress your emotions, it comes back with a vengeance. That's like another thing I realized. All these guys who are like, oh, I'm not emotional, I don't have emotions. Like, when it comes down to it, when they can't control themselves, it's like the worst. really, really crazy, like emotional rage crazy. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Friday evening. I don't know what you're gonna be doing this Friday evening. I'm probably gonna be, maybe I'll read a book. Like, I'll clean up a little bit, and then maybe I'll read a book. Just like a really chill weekend. And normally every weekend I'm like doing something. And so I feel like this weekend I'm just not gonna do stuff. I'm just gonna like enjoy myself, like read a book, hang out by myself a little bit, because I'm always like around other people. And Nate says I shouldn't go. Oh my gosh, thank you. Oh, thanks so much for watching, you guys, by the way. Like, I feel like really lucky. Like, it's such a nice feeling to be able to like connect with people in these live streams. And I know that I watch these too. When other people do them, I watch them, but I always think I'm like the only one. But the more I do it, the more I realize like a lot of people are like that too. Like, it's not just me. It's like a lot of people like this. Like to, connect with, a lot of people, yeah. Anyways, so I really appreciate it a lot, and I'm excited to try and get these on SoundCloud and all this stuff, iTunes, this podcast, and so I'm basically gonna be recording these on Anchor as like a proper podcast, and it's gonna like distribute it. So I'll put it in my description on YouTube when it's ready. So hope you all have a wonderful evening, a wonderful weekend. Be chill. Don't pay attention so much to the Iran stuff that's going on. If you want to, watch the podcast from last night. We talked about Iran, and but it's so toxic, and the fights that are going on over it are just so not worth losing your health and your sleep and your stress over it. Good night, Jorge. And so, like, just enjoy yourself, and see you all Monday night. Don't forget to like this video and hit the thumbs up, as Diacritical says. On Periscope, hit the heart the video. And if you haven't subscribed, that's another thing I noticed. Like, a bunch of people are watching this and are not subscribing. Subscribe to my channel! I'm gonna be so mad if you don't subscribe. So subscribe. And see you all next week. See you all Monday.